Yo, what's up, guys? Just got back from watching Black Phone, the brand new horror film from Blumhouse Productions. Blumhouse, if you're not aware, has made a long list of horror films. Most of them usually pretty good, and this one is no different. I really enjoyed this film. Now, we will get into some spoiler territory, so if you have not already watched the film, you may want to stop watching now. But yeah, Blumhouse has a long track record. They did, I believe, the Paranormal Activity movies way back in the day. I believe they also did things like Insidious, Annabelle. I believe they did Get Out as well. I believe that was the name of that film. They did all of the I'm trying to remember the name of the series that followed. I believe their names were Ed and Elizabeth Warren, if I remember correctly. The paranormal investigators. I can't remember at the moment what the name of that series was, but they did those as well. They have a long track record of doing successful horror films. I believe they did The Purge. I believe they're responsible for that series as well, off the top of my head. But yeah, long track record of doing successful horror films. This is no different. I really liked Black Phone. We're going to get into it in just a moment. I do want to say, however, that even though I think Black Phone is a really good film and I think people should watch it, my gut feeling is that a lot of people will not watch it initially. And that's a shame, because it is a pretty good film. But I think what hurt it a lot is I feel like the advertising for it wasn't as strong as it otherwise could have been. I don't think it was advertised well, at least from what I've seen. And I also think it came out at a really bad time. Because we still have movies like Top Gun, Maverick that are still doing the numbers, even though it's been out for like a month now. We also have things like Lightyear, which honestly Lightyear kind of bombed, but people are still, at least a few people coming to see it. You have things like Jurassic World that's bringing in people right now. And then you also had Elvis that released day and date with Black Phone. So I think there's a lot of stuff that's going to detract attention from Black Phone, as well as the fact that it just, in my opinion, wasn't advertised well. So as much as I think it's a good movie, I don't think it's going to necessarily do well. But that being said, let's get into the movie. So again, spoiler warning, haven't seen the movie, gonna want to stop watching now. But getting right into the movie, the general premise of the movie is there's this guy, they call him the Grabber, and he's kind of like a local legend. All the kids talk about him, and if you say his name, chances are you're gonna get grabbed. He's kind of become like a local legend, but it's just a dude, right? And he kidnaps these kids, and one by one, a bunch of kids go missing, and they die. A lot of them you don't necessarily see them die in the movie. There are like glimpses of them like already dead, and you see a couple things, and it's a little graphic, but the movie doesn't get into it too much. I think it touches on it just enough to get the point across. But yeah, this guy, he kidnaps kids. The kids die, and then the main protagonist of the film, his name's Finney, and a bunch of his friends went missing and were killed by this guy, as well as pretty much every person that's been killed by this guy, Finney knows in some way, shape, or form. And Finney inevitably gets kidnapped by the same guy. Now, so he's kidnapped by the guy and he's being held in a basement. Now, throughout the film, there's kind of two plot lines going on throughout the entire film. You see, like, Finney and his sisters. He has a sister, by the way, I didn't mention that. But you see their home life, and they have the kind of stereotypical single father, real piece of shit. He's a drunk. He abuses them. You see some of that, and they get, like, there's one scene in particular in the film where they really lay that point across just hot and heavy. Like, he is just beating the shit out of this kid. And he's just a real piece of shit. Their father, like, terrible, right? And he kind of sort of has a redemption arc by the end of the film, depending on how you feel about it. I still think he's a piece of shit. But basically, they loosely talk about the two kids' mother, and they never, throughout the entire film, really get into what happened. They briefly mention it, but apparently their mother had this uncanny ability that she would have dreams, and these dreams would lead her to, like, real world events, presumably. We don't see the mother in the film, we don't see any of this happen, but we see the daughter, Finney's sister, exude these same talents. Like, one of the kids gets kidnapped at one point and, dies. And she talks about having a dream about black balloons in a black van. And then there's a bunch of interrogators that sit her down from the police, and they're like, "How did you know about the balloons?" And she's like, "What?" And they're like, "There were black balloons at the crime scene. How did you know about them? We didn't disclose that information." Right? So she apparently has the ability her mother has. Her father briefly mentions it throughout the film. It's the reason why he beats the shit out of her in the film. It's because he doesn't want her to follow, presumably, down the same steps as her mother. Now, they never really get into it, but they briefly mention that her mother eventually killed herself. And the father believes it's because of her dreams. So that's a whole plot line through the film. That's like a B plot line, right? It's not the main plot line, but it's kind of going on. He's got, like, psychic sister thing going on, and it works. I wish they would have delved into the mother thing a little bit more. Maybe some flashbacks. Maybe something a bit more substantial. I feel like if the movie is successful, that they will probably release another movie that delves into that a bit more, or they might try to tie it in with some of their already existing IPs, because Blumhouse likes to do that a lot. They're kind of working on their own quote-unquote cinematic universe. A lot of their stuff kind of ties in some way or another. And I could see them maybe using that as a plot point to tie into something else at a later date. But for right now, they keep it very vague and open in terms of, like, the mother and that plot line. So while the plot line's going on with the sister having these psychic visions in her dreams that are leading her to find her brother, we have the main plot line, which is the main point of the movie, the reason why it's called Black Phone. It's the whole bread and butter of the film, and that is Finney, after he gets kidnapped by the grabber, as the movie refers to him as, he is kept in a basement that has been specifically designed to be soundproof from what we're told in the film. And there is a black phone on the wall. Now, the black phone on the wall, it's clearly shown in the movie that the phone line for it has been cut, and therefore shouldn't be operable. But of course, the phone rings, and it rings a lot in the movie. A lot. Now, the grabber, I don't want to continue calling him that. I don't think they ever say his name in the movie, at least not from what I can recall. So we're just going to call him Steve for the rest of this review. But essentially the bad guy, right? The kidnapper. We're just going to call him Steve, because I don't think they ever said his name. But Steve can also hear the phone ring, but he forces himself to believe that it doesn't. And throughout the film, Steve says a bunch of things alluding to the fact that he once was also locked in this very basement. He talks about how he used to hear the phone ring as a kid, how he used to spend a lot of time in this room. So he alludes to the fact that he once was also locked in this basement, the same way he's been locking these kids in the basement. And at first, as far as kidnappers go, at first he doesn't seem that bad. He offers the kid a soda. You know, he's like, hey, not gonna hurt you, da 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 da. And it all goes downhill very quickly. Like, at first, he seems like he seems less of like bad guy and more of like misunderstood, chaotic neutral kind of thing, right? And it takes a turn very quickly. But going back to Finney, he's locked in the room, and the phone rings even though it shouldn't be able to. And the first time he answers it, he doesn't really hear anything, it rings again, and he hears someone say his name, and it freaks him the fuck out. He hangs up the phone, and throughout the film, the phone rings many times. And the people, because there's more than one, on the other end of the phone are the spirits of the kids who were killed by Steve. So all of the kids who were held in that room and eventually killed by Steve, their spirits are now helping Finney escape. And it's a really cool concept, and they do a lot of really cool things with that. One of the things that bothered me a lot throughout most of the film, thankfully by the end of the film, they wrapped it up in a way that like kind of made sense. But for a majority of the film, it kind of goes like this: the phone rings. It's a voice on the other end. Finney's talking to them. He kind of, based on context clues, figures out who they were. And because apparently the spirits don't know who they are or who they were, because apparently, as they put it in the movie, your name is the first thing you lose when you die. So he figures out who they are, based on context clues, and then the phone will ring. One of the ghosts will tell him, hey, this is what I tried doing when I was stuck there. You can find A, B, and C at this location, right? Like, so they each give him, like, a plan to escape, right? And that's cool, right? Except they don't really follow through with it. And again, by the end of the movie, they use all of that information in a way that wraps it all up and makes it satisfactory. And I'll get to that in a second. But, like, for example, the first kid's like, hey, there's a loose tile at this part of the room. If you pull it up, you can start digging, right? So Finney does that. He pulls up the tile, he starts digging, and then, he's using, there's a toilet in the room as well, so he's using the toilet to get rid of the dirt, some real, like, prison escape type shit. And he's using, like, a rug to cover the hole so that Steve doesn't see the hole and freak out. And he digs the hole, like, fairly deep, and then he just kind of gives up on it, because the phone rings again, and then the kid's like, hey, there's a piece of lining or rope along the edge of a wall that I peeled back, and you could probably use that to reach this window that's up at the top of the basement that's, like, barred in, and you could probably use it to pry the bars out. So he completely gives up on the hole to do that plan, which he does pull the bars down, but then he pulls the bars down and then never tries to get back to the window, which is kind of dumb because the window's right there, the bars are gone. You could just open the window, crawl out, and leave. But he never really goes back to it, and it's kind of strange. But if you're willing to look past that, one of the other kids calls him because Steve comes down, talks to him, and then leaves the door open, and he's about to, like, go upstairs, right? Like, through the door, and the phone rings. So he stops, he answers the phone, and the kid's like, hey, don't go out there, he's gonna be waiting for you, right? And then it pans to Steve, like, waiting upstairs in a chair, just shirtless with a mask on and a belt. And he's like, yeah, he's waiting for you. If you go up there, he's gonna beat the shit out of you, right? So then Finney decides to go through the door anyway, which is, funny. But he doesn't go all the way up. He just kind of goes a couple steps up, and then he turns around and he goes back in the room. So it was kind of a test from the kidnapper, Steve. And so then, moving forward, there's another part where he gets another phone call, and this kid's like, hey, I was there once, and if you go to the bathroom above this outlet and break the wall, you'll end up behind a refrigerator, and you can open a panel on the back of the refrigerator, and you'll end up in the freezer, from which you could then open or try to open the door and escape that way. And that whole scene was kind of weird because, like, that's not really how refrigerators work. They don't just have a giant panel that you can take off and crawl into the freezer. I should preference that, like, it's a big standing, like, double wide, like, industrial refrigerator. It's not like something you have in your kitchen at home. But still, that's not really how refrigerators work, so that was kind of weird. But yeah, so he tries that, and then the fridge is locked. So it's got, like, double doors, and it's locked. So he can't get through. So then he crawls out and cries. And then he gets a phone call from his best friend, who also is dead. And his best friend's like, hey, this is what you're going to do. You're going to fight him. You're going to fight the guy, and you're going to kick his ass, and you're going to get out of here. right? So they have like almost like a training montage, which was kind of cool actually, because you could see like his friend like Ghost behind him, like mimicking the motions. It was really cool. But basically, it all comes down to now Finney had all these opportunities to try to escape, and he all just kind of half-assed all of them. And now it's like, oh, I'm just gonna fight the guy now, right? So what ends up happening is he uses the phone, right? His friend's like, look, you're gonna take the receiver of the phone, you're gonna cut it off, and you're gonna pack it full of dirt so it's nice and heavy. So he can't call them anymore. He said, like, this is the final call. It's all on you now, right? Take what we've given you and get out of here. So he does. He packs the phone full of dirt, and then he has, like, the line that he used to get to the window earlier in the movie. He pulls it across a narrow, like, hallway where he also dug the hole and put a carpet over it, and he put the bars from the window in the bottom of the hole. So the kidnapper, Steve, whatever you want to call him, comes down, and he's going after him, and he runs, right? He runs, and he jumps over the hole, and then Steve hits the line that he pulled. He falls into the hole, breaks his ankle on the bars, and then Finney just proceeds to beat the shit out of him with the phone. Like, the dude's, like, this far into the hole, it's just, like, his upper torso, like, sticking out of the hole. His ankle's broken, so he can't get out. And he just beats the shit out of him with the phone. And then he goes to strangle him with the phone line, and then the phone rings. And that was the coolest fucking part in the movie, because Finney goes, "This one's for you." And he puts the phone up to the dude's face as he's strangling him. And it's like all the spirits of the children he's killed. And like, they talk in kind of cryptid ways throughout the movie. Like, kind of vague and cryptic. But like, not with a whole lot of context. But those very same lines that they used throughout the movie, they then splice together from each of the kids in this very moment. And it all makes sense. It all comes together. It's all fluid. And he just kills the guy, like, outright, in cold blood. And he walks out the house, and at this moment, his sister and the police are arriving, because that B plot line that's been going on throughout the movie, she eventually found out where her brother was being held, and he walks out the house and gets hugged by his sister, and he just killed a guy. Yeah. He's like 12, just killed a guy, no big deal. And he goes back to school, and then everybody at school is just like, yo, that's the dude that killed a guy. And that's pretty much where the movie ends. That's like a short, like, wrap up of the whole movie. But, like, the entire thing as a whole was really good. Like, the cinematography was good. The way they, like, they would sometimes just interject, like, some of the children, like, ghosts into the scenes. In very, like, jarring and unexpected ways. Like, it was all done very nice, very classic Blumhouse. Like, if you've seen a Blumhouse movie, this is a Blumhouse movie. But overall, I really liked it. I hope the rest of you will also give this movie a chance. But yeah, I would give it a solid, like, 7, maybe even an 8 out of 10. Like, it's right on the border of, like, a 7 or an 8. I hope they do something more with this moving forward. They could do maybe a prequel where we see Steve, or the kidnapper, the grabber, whatever you want to call him, his childhood. Maybe they could do a movie based on that. They could do a movie based on the mother that they vaguely hint at in this film. I hope they do something more with it. But overall, solid movie. We'll give it a 7 out of 10. And yeah, that's about it. See ya.